So good morning, everyone. And we thank all of you for participating in this important knowledge event, Leading in a VUCA World. And I think everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. I remember these wonderful lines from Mike Tyson. So I think we all had a plan, but we all got punched. And now, who would have thought that we all are doing this webinar from our houses? But I think this is what it is. And this is the new normal that we are all about to witness in the times to come. We thank Rexcruit, a global healthcare executive search firm, for sponsoring this important initiative and taking the lead in helping us conducting this important webinar. I will also take this opportunity to thank all the senior panelists who have taken out time from their busy schedule and are willing to share the best practices. And I think these best practices will help all the leaders to navigate successfully this crisis that the humankind is witnessing. The coronavirus outbreak is first and foremost, I think we all will agree, is a human tragedy affecting hundreds of thousands of people. It is also having a growing impact on the global economy. In fact, in the morning, there is a news that it will be a recession which will be worse than many other recessions put together. Even the global depression will be smaller than this, the kind of recession that we will see. So a lot of gloom and doom, but still I think we will discuss strategies how to come out of this whole crisis successfully. It is increasingly clear our era will be defined by a fundamental schism. The period before COVID-19 and the new normal that will emerge in the post-viral era, the next normal. We all don't know what that next normal will be, but I think there will be a new normal which we all have to adapt. And in this unprecedented new reality, we will witness a dramatic restructuring of the economic and social order. And I think not only economic and social order, but we will also see a dramatic restructuring of the global order. So there will be different power centers which will emerge globally. And this will be very different from which we are used to the business and society have traditionally operated. So it will be a very different world altogether. And in the near future, we will see the beginning of discussion and debate about what the next normal could entail and how sharply its contours will diverge from those that previously shaped our lives. So I would request each panelist to put themselves on mute, and I will take this opportunity to now introduce our chief guest, Mr. Annaswamy Vedish. I think we are all blessed to have Mr. Vedish amongst us today. And Mr. Vedish, I'll just give a brief background of Mr. Vedish. He's a well-known figure, but still, for our friends who are joining in from abroad, we have almost 100 participants, and few of the participants are from abroad also, from different countries. So I'll take this opportunity to give a brief introduction of Mr. Vedish. Mr. Vedish is the president of the Organization of Pharmaceutical Producer of India, and he was till recently the vice president South Asia and managing director of GlaxoSmithKline Pharmaceutical. He has over 3 decades of experience, and he has worked with Johnson & Johnson and many other prestigious companies. He's the chairman of Healthcare Committee of CII, Confederation of Indian Industry, and he's also on the board of UK India Business Council. He was recognized as one of the most influential leaders of Asia by Economic Times at the Asian Business Leaders Conclave. So we will start with Mr. Vedish. And sir, most of the leaders attending this webinar know how to captain the ship in smooth sea. but few of us also know how to safely navigate in a storm. A lot of us, I think, in the panel and maybe people who are attending this, we all know how to navigate our ship even in small storms, which we all have seen in our professional lives. But sir, we need your wisdom today on how should we successfully navigate our ships in this tsunami. So when this is tsunami, it is very difficult for a leader to navigate the ship. And I think personally, I believe that this is a tsunami which has happened. Sir, your wealth of experience, and you have successfully overcome many crises of severe, if not similar magnitude. And we want you to please share your pearls of wisdom on how can leaders successfully navigate this crisis now that our traditional metrics and assumptions have all been rendered irrelevant. So over to you, sir, for your keynote address.
I think you are still on mute.
Mr. Vedish, you have to remove, yes, sir.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, sir. Loud and clear.
Perfect. And I got a message from Manish Panchal saying that there is some echo. It could be due to the people not on mute. I think if everybody is on mute, then you may not get echo. So that's something which I want to start off. Okay. So first and foremost, Gaurav, I think what has been set up by Sakshi and also people like you and forum for people to at least apply our mind on what's happening today, a context where everybody is confused and some are hopeful, some are pessimistic. So as I've never seen the whole world is only watching news, and I don't see anybody else watching any other program. There are no sports channel, there is no entertainment channels, but everybody is like for 24 hours just on news. So I think we are in a very, very, for lack of a better word, I would say call it a difficult time. But however, in the next 5 to 10 minutes, I will try to give some sense of fact that it's not doom and gloom. What you and me are going through, all of us in the world, is a typical, as you rightly titled this program as VUCA world. Basically, VUCA world is defined, which I don't need to go through, but I will go through it from point of setting the context. Typically, it has to be volatile. There's a lot of uncertainty and complex, and with a lot of ambiguity. And this combination, taken together, characterize the nature of a difficult conditions. It's also typically stand for adjectives, but for important for us to understand, we are in a very typical VUCA situation. Each one of us have been in such kind of VUCA situation personally and also professionally and in a social form. But every VUCA situation, in my opinion, is an opportunity as and when the situation is managed well. So what I plan to do is to take you through some of the principles which me as a professional has adopted, and also me as a professional or as an individual have dealt with, if not at a similar scale, but of scale something where there is a lesson for us to look at. So what we keep using the word VUCA leadership, right? You know, like what you just mentioned, the peacetime leadership is very different from a wartime leadership. I would say it's the same scenario as a VUCA leadership, right? So basically what you are saying is a leadership is an ability of an individual or a group of individuals to influence and guide followers or other members of an organization or a society at times of VUCA, right? So basically what people are looking for, you use the term called India Healthcare Leaders Forum. Now, basically, I would say then somebody called, nobody called us one leader, right? In a VUCA situation, you don't know who's going to become a leader. But anybody who provides a glimmer of hope, somebody seems to have some sense of how to manage volatility or a complex, trying to make a complex situation compelling and clear, then you are likely to follow that person or a particular organization. Like as you see, somebody keeps saying New Zealand has done like this, Wuhan has done like this. You know, people are trying to figure out who is providing leadership to get out of this situation. But it's a very typical situation where you are going to see a lot of leaders emerging out of a VUCA leadership. Need not necessarily be the traditional leadership. In a situation like what we are facing, I would say, I have some reflection. First and foremost, you should be willing to trade some of your freedom for the greater good of the public. For example, in a COVID situation, right? Today, first and foremost, a good leader is going to trade some of their freedom for greater good. Now, not necessarily everybody understands that, but I think this is a very important piece, particularly when it affects, typically if it affects a family, the father's job or a parent's job is to make sure the children understand that they have to participate in willing to trade off their some of the freedom. And very interestingly, in a COVID kind of situation, suddenly working from home seems to be an option for many now. Earlier days, in a normal time where we used to say working from home is considered as somebody who's having some challenge. But today, working from home is becoming an option for many. People used to come to the office even though when they are sick, and we used to call them as warriors, right? People are here, he's suffering from something, but look at this, how he comes and works. So we used to call those people as somebody who's putting their best even at times sickness. But today, taking that sick day could save lives. So it's a very different paradigm. Internet should become a basic right, like what we calling it as what are the basic rights of living. Today, internet is becoming a basic right of every citizen of the world. Doctors and researchers, as you must have seen, particularly in the healthcare industry, there is a lot of negativity, pessimism, or a bad publicity about the whole healthcare industry. In a matter of time, you are now looking at standing up and clapping for the so-called the frontline heroes. Suddenly the same doctors and researchers, and we never used to pay attention to the researchers. We used to call the PhDs somebody who don't have any other job just because of that he's doing a PhD. But today we are talking about doctors and researchers need to be paid better. What a different world we are in. Jokingly, but I would say everyone should know how to cook. Now, people thought that I can get away by being with someone who cooks for me. Today, maybe one need to know how to cook, take care of himself or herself. An importance of talking to friends every day suddenly has come up as a very good option, which we never used to find time for our friends. Another important thing which I'm finding is suddenly everybody learning to appreciate the nature, and where we never had a chance to talk about nature, but I see a conversation about now we are suddenly appreciating the nature. And last but not the least, what I see is that I think people are learning to be content being alone. Now, these are all a very interesting paradigm that we are seeing that is emerging in this kind of VUCA situation. However, I'm a strong believer in the concept of theory of constraints. Some of engineers, some of the people who are operations would know this better, but I use this as the lighthouse for many of the VUCA situation. And VUCA situation basically does is to create constraint in what you've been doing. So any manageable system, we all live in a world that we believe everything is manageable, is being limited in achieving your goals, whether it's an organizational goal, personal goals, by various small number of constraints, sometimes big number of constraints. Whereas theory of constraint, which I've had an opportunity to apply it in various point of time in my career, it uses a focusing process to identify the constraint and restructure the rest of the organization around it. And something it's called TOC, theory of constraint, adopts the common idiom of a chain is no stronger than its weakest link. This means that a process, organization, etc., vulnerable because of the weakest person or a part can always damage or break them, at least adversely affect the outcome. It's a very interesting theory that I strongly, I'm not going to go through the whole theory, but it's very important, whomsoever the audience or the viewers, if you can undertake a course on this, either through Coursera or various other digital-based courses that are available, I would say that will open up our minds to look at this today's situation as an opportunity and use certain principles. There are various other principles, but I enjoy using theory of constraint. The underlying premise of this theory of constraint is that an organization can be measured and controlled by variations on three measures. One, through a throughput, which is what you say in a business, you will say sales and profits. And the other one is the operational expense. And the last one is inventory. Inventory is all the money that the system has invested in purchasing things, which it intends to sell. Operational expense is all the money the system spends in order to turn inventory into throughput. And throughput is the rate at which the system generates money through sales. Now, if I look at in a goal-oriented system, typically you will always find out of various constraints, there's one constraint, the biggest constraint will be the one which will be preventing you from what you want to accomplish. If there was nothing preventing a system from achieving higher throughput, a throughput would be infinite, which is impossible in a real life system. Only by increasing flow through the constraint can overall throughput be increased. Now, I'm just giving that as a theory for you to reflect. So, which I'll get applied to our current scenario, right? Today, if you look at what has happened to our world that we have been living, that we have been doing business in a normal way. I take the pharmaceutical business as an example. That in a pharmaceutical business, company produces the drugs and medicines, and there is a standard supply chain, and there is a demand generated through the doctors who write the prescription for those medicines, and the medicines are procured by chemists from the distributors, and then the patient buy those medicines. Now, this is the situation where many of the companies are finding out how do I drive the throughput, and they find the constraints in different aspects of the value chain. Now, today, what has happened is with COVID-19 coming in, suddenly the constraint is no longer the constraint that we have been operating on. Suddenly the constraint has become, how do I make sure I make the supply available to the patient at the chemist level, And if you look at the theory of constraint, now what is the biggest constraint that's preventing? Now, I just went through that exercise in the last 1 month, very, very systematically saying that first you start with your raw material, right, which is coming from China. That is the biggest constraint for you to start manufacturing and giving commitment to the Prime Minister saying that the drugs are going to be available. Now, we can sit and cry about the fact that I have the pharmaceutical ingredient that is used is not available. So, but however, I need to make sure the drugs are made available. Okay. So the very important 3-step approach, which you normally follow, is identify the system constraint, decide how to exploit the system constraints, and subordinate everything else to the above decisions, and elevate the system constraints, right? Very important warning here is, if the previous steps, the constraint has been broken, go back to step 1. So this is what happened, right? Because inertia will set in, that will cause system constraint once again. So as soon as you sorted out the ingredient that is required for, say, paracetamol, then you look for intermediate that is required. So how do you get that intermediate? Then that becomes one more constraint. So we went through this series of constraint which was not allowing. How do I make sure the printer is not available? Now I've got all the medicine drugs available, but it's made available at the factory. Then how do I make sure now continue to procure carton with the printer? Now where is the printer? Now the printers are already shutting down. Their laborers have gone out of city. They have all migrant laborers, right? So now you as a leader cannot assume the constraints are only one constraint, but if you start putting the energy behind one big constraint, get it out of the way, and then go to the next constraint, because we can't sit idle by saying, I solved the problem of the primary raw material. So I'm not going to get into the details, which is a very important process when you are dealing in a situation where you can't assume that, because at the end of the day, the weakest link, because when we get a call from a Prime Minister's office, whether the paracetamol is going to be made available for the last 4 months, and broadly speaking, we say, yes, I've got a 4 months material, I've got a 4 months inventory, but I don't know how to convert it into something where people can buy, right? So then he wants to know, tell me what you want me to do. How can I help you? So going through this constraints in thorough detail up to the last mile, where from a warehouse to a distributor place, where the stocks are not able to move. So what is the constraint there? So it's very important for a leader not to let their head down and making sure continuously go through this theory of, now I'm just going to say another couple of minutes and I'll stop here. In my opinion, this is a brilliant opportunity for people who have never seen the concept of how the new paradigm comes into our life. I remember, of course, my various experiences. One such experience I still remember. I was in Indonesia. I was a marketing director, and the business was growing at almost 30%. I was in consumer business at that time. This was in 1997. And yeah, you get recognized for an outstanding performance, and the economy was booming, growing at 10-11%. And quite obviously, this whole economic crisis that happened, I think, if I'm not mistaken, July 27th or 26th, and I was in the flight to Bangkok, and there was a professor sitting next to me. I said, very prophetic, and where he talked about the fact that Thailand is not in good shape, where he was attending a conference where he was one of the economic experts. They're like, this is not sustainable economic growth. And guess what? In a matter of 2 days' time, the entire Southeast Asian country, one by one, starting with, then Hong Kong started defaulting. And I was in a country where I was in the board, and we didn't know what hit, where the currency went from a 2,000 rupiah to a dollar. Almost in 45 days, it went to 17,000 rupiah, where the salary of our finance director, who was an American, he was earning in dollars, was equal to running the entire manufacturing plant. And where that finance director told the board, we used to meet almost every 5 hours. And the lessons that, a lot of lessons we learned, how to deal with the VUCA with dispassionately. And first thing he said is that, you know what, guess what, guys, if you want to be a sustainable organization before we become bankrupt, first thing is you need to fire me, because I'm the most expensive element in this whole theory of constraints. So we have to take such calls where the good of others for far more important than good of you. How am I going to survive? So it's a very important lesson which you learn. Of course, we went through a lot of, including my salary was almost became a large part of my salary was in local currency, and some part of my pay packet was in dollars. It's almost my salary for almost a year went down by almost 80%, though later on the compensation. So we went through a challenging time about how to preserve yourself at a time. And it went through a coup that was happening where the President Suharto was thrown out and where we need to be evacuated from the country where the whole city was burning. Now, sometimes we don't realize that what are the skills that are required to stay calm and do what needed to be done at a personal front. And also if you want to be a leader, how are you going to protect your organization and also the people who work for you? So that's a separate story, but I can clearly tell you, when I look back, what brilliant lessons that we learned, but most of the VUCA condition don't last long. When it lasts, it does have a significant impact. It's a new paradigm, new way of doing things. But I would say as a human beings, we become far richer and better as we come through out of this, the VUCA conditions. So if I have to conclude by saying, in the pharma industry, I clearly see it's going to be a new order where digital is going to be the new industrial age. I somehow believe it's a dawn of a new era where people were saying digital approach in doing business, more addendum to my regular way of doing. I personally believe that this has changed the dimensions of how we are going to do business as we move forward. This is a time for all the companies, senior leadership, have to think, how are you going to sharpen the saw to prepare for the new world as and when it opens up? How do you leverage the benefit of reps or the e-communication? How are you going to create value through digitally? How you are going to deliver value through digitally, and how are we going to capture the value through digitally? So entire business model is going to so much revolve around. So the capabilities of an organization, the kind of talent that you're going to look in the organization. If somebody said that I was a super salesman by having great relationship with the doctors and doing so much with the distributors, probably it's an old order capability. Maybe you have to start looking at a new order capability, which is going to be very important if you want to win post-COVID market scenario. So I believe is big warning, if you think that your constraint has been broken, as we continuously say, that social distancing is a constraint, social distancing is a solution to what COVID-19 has been. So we are putting all the big efforts behind, subordinated everything behind the social distancing. And one weak link can cause the constraint back into the system. So it's very important we stay safe, maintain the social distance. We need to kill the bug before we start saying we have arrived to look at the new paradigm. Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you, Sakshi.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think it's a very, very meaningful and very valuable insights. And particularly, I liked about your theory of constraints. I think this is very important and critical for all the leaders and who are attending this program. And the digital transformation that you have talked about, I think that is the new normal that we are going to see in the near future. But also, boss, just to let you know that I have also started cooking. Yesterday was the first day when I have cooked very delicious Maggie for my family. Of course, they didn't like it. But
so that's not delicious.
So by the time this whole, I think lockdown is over, I'll try to learn some vegetarian meals and
Excellent.
So I think very valuable insights, sir. And thanks a lot as always. Now I am pleased to introduce our next esteemed panelist, Mr. Prabal Chakravarti. Prabal is the managing partner of Ekesia Advisors. He comes with a very rich experience of over 27 years in the medical device industry. He has worked with prestigious companies like Boston Scientific and J&J. He has held several leadership positions in different industry bodies, like chairman of the Medical Device Committee of American Chamber of Commerce in India, co-chair of Confederation of Indian Industry, Indian Advisory Council member of US, and director at Medical Technology Association of India. He's a very active member of bodies like FICCI, AdvaMed, and NatHealth, and he's trying his bit to shape the healthcare environment in India. So Prabal, as the COVID-19 pandemic spreads and the human cost grows, MedTech leadership teams are racing to respond and are also managing critical business issues tied directly to the health crisis. Demand for urgent care equipment and supplies is outstripping production capacity, while elective procedures are declining. With healthcare experts and providers warning of critical shortages of medical equipments to cope up with the crisis, manufacturers are preparing to meet a wartime need scenario. In the face of these upheavals, how do you think companies can support their customers and employees, cope with fast changing demands, and prepare for long-term structural changes in the business? Over to you, Prabal.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So good morning to all of you. And first and foremost, I'd like to appreciate the tremendous effort that all of you are putting in to save patients' lives and also to deliver healthcare in such an unprecedented and a trying situation that we are in today. I'd like to also thank Vaidesh for really setting the strategic roadmap, the strategic direction. What I'll try and do over the next 5 to 10 minutes time is to go one level deeper. My talk would be rather a little bit tactical, so that we are able to cover the entire gamut of the different aspects which are involved in dealing with a crisis. It's obvious that none of us have the kind of experience that we are going through now. And one of the things which is worth mentioning out here, that today business is challenged between the two horns of dilemma. And as we all know, as we are all reading newspapers and listening to television, lives and livelihood. No other industry, apart from healthcare industry, is so closely involved in both the aspects, that is lives and livelihood. Now, as Gaurav mentioned, in some hospitals, the procedure mix has changed dramatically as they are focusing on COVID patients. In some hospitals and nursing homes, patient flow has reduced dramatically. And the other day I was listening to a particular television channel, and a nursing home in Calcutta was talking about zero occupancy. Medical device industry, as we all know, that a very small part of that focuses on COVID-related products. Substantially, most of them focus on products which are more related to elective surgeries. And we know that elective procedures are showing a huge decline as patients and hospitals are trying to cope with the current situation. We all know that the supply chain has got disrupted. In India, 3.5 lakh trucks are stranded on the road. 35,000 crore worth of products are lying idle, open to pilferage and damage. And there are no drivers, there are no helpers, and truckers who are willing to move goods. Obviously, they're exposing themselves to high levels of risk, and hence the cost of transportation has more than doubled in many cases. So in this situation, setting this as a kind of a context, it is absolutely important to identify and target customers in order to maximize patient care and healthcare delivery. There's no reference of any discrimination out here between patients, but given the constraints, and Vaidish was talking about the theory of constraints out here, what is important is to identify the hospitals where the patient flow is still very much there. It is also important to understand whether the supply chain that you have or you are trying to work upon can reach the products to those hospitals. If both are true, then patients can benefit from your services as well as your products. The one thing which is very important in a crisis situation, and we have seen it, this is going back to the basics in many ways, that cash flow is going to be the most important factor of business across all stakeholder groups. Every activity should be reviewed, and if it is not absolutely urgent and essential, should be stopped. Costs should be cut at every possible point. Since the environment is changing almost on a daily basis, it would be important to do cash flow projections and forecasting on a regular basis. And for this responsibility should not be delegated to finance alone. I think cross-functional teams should be formed, as the nature of the is extraordinarily complex. One needs to be brutally honest about sales projections. It would decline by 30 to 50%, as some of the experts have been sharing, and it could be even more. So cash flow forecasting should account for this. Receivables should be collected as much as possible, as many customers may not be in a position to pay or would like to delay the payments. Credit limits should be reviewed on a temporary basis to ease the situation. Inventory reordering should move from an auto mode to regular review mode. Flexible production capabilities in certain instances may help, but when you're looking at the medical device industry in India, 70 to 80% of the products are imported and are not really manufactured in India. And hence, this may not be possible for many of the companies because they are primarily importers. Credit lines, if available, should be drawn now, and we are seeing some of the very large companies outside our industry, Cognizant, etc., they're going ahead and drawing the credit lines in a big way. Temporary price reductions, alternate contracting may be helpful. Now, one of the most important things that we are seeing, and many hospitals and many medical device organizations, they have huge receivables with respect to government schemes, CGHS, ECHS, etc. So we have seen industry associations like FICCI, MTI, CII, NATHealth. They have formed a united front, and they are working with the government to try and see whether the huge amount, I understand it is to the government has agreed to release payments worth about 3,700 crores. And I think this effort should continue so that in even the future sales that are likely to happen, the payments come in time. Guy, you can hear me?
Yeah, Prabal, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sure. So also these industry bodies as a united front, they have requested the government to help with measures around GST, income tax, health cess, and several others to ease cash flow and working capital requirements to tide over this crisis. And this effort should continue as an united front. Then comes a very important perspective, and as Gaurav mentioned, that I should comment on the employee safety. I think employee safety is going to be extraordinarily crucial. And we can see some kind of a hybrid model over the next 6 months to 1 year kind of a time frame when the vaccines are expected 1 year down the road. And till such time, it is important that we maintain social distancing. And a hybrid model would be something that would be extremely effective, where some employees would be working from home, where some people would be working from office. And obviously the people would be changing from time to time. But there is also a possibility the entire situation is going to be dynamic, because suddenly if a patient crops up in that particular office, the entire building would be sealed off, and hence all organizations should be prepared for the next 1 year to figure out systems and processes so that people can really work from home and deliver healthcare to the patients. From a sales perspective, sales and marketing perspective, it is important to reassess the targets, update the commissions, and in some ways, Vaidish alluded to it about reduction in compensations and salaries. And I think under the current situation, as I mentioned, that cash flow is perhaps one of the most important factors. And instead of sales really guiding, okay, or leading the entire, target setting and commissions, it is important that cash flow should go ahead and guide the target setting and commissions for the crisis period. It is very important to be transparent and honest with employees. One has to bite the bullet. Transparent and open communication is the need of the hour. And very important, the pain needs to be shared. An entire team should work together to find the best solutions. Leaders have to really roll up their sleeves. Hands-on leadership would be the need of the hour, and even a phrase which is sometimes abhorred by many people, micromanagement, needs to be adhered to under this crisis situation. Now, social distancing, as Gaurav mentioned, as well as Vaidish mentioned, is going to be the new normal. And I think the job of a salesperson is going to get impacted in a very, very big way. And digital development within organizations should be accelerated, as we have started hearing already that digital solutions for procedure training, for product detailing, awareness creation, online invoicing, online payment, and even people are talking in terms of digital booths, digital conferences. So everything is going the digital way. So here I think it is important for the organization. It is a fact that cash is a concern, sales is not coming, but anybody who has got is in a slightly better cash position. It is important to also start investing in the digital development, because 6 months down the road or 1 year down the road when situation improves, this will become a real competitive advantage. Also, it is important for us to understand that new competencies and capabilities would be needed as we move into the future, and sales reps' job would look very, very different. Now, we all know that a lot of learnings normally come out of crisis situations. So organizations should definitely explore alternate supply chains, additional capacity in multiple locations, which can be activated in a very short period of time to deal with crisis situations in the future. This will definitely add to the cost, but will be the new normal. Now, during a crisis period, organizations also realize the set of activities, systems, processes that are redundant or can be made redundant. Thereby, they should focus on finding new ways of doing things in a more efficient and safe manner. It is important to start at the same time as we are dealing with this crisis to reimagine the new organization structure needed to business in the new world. Let me conclude as in some ways, touching upon what Vaidish said, that we are all eternally optimist. In spite of this crisis, we are sure that it will definitely blow over. And I would like to share some of the thoughts. And you look at any kind of crisis, you'll see that some of the deepest reforms have always happened during a crisis period. And I would like to take all of you back to 91, 92, when the situation in India was really bad. Now, some of the greatest reforms were implemented in that period, that is 1991 and 92. Now, Niti Aayog has already started sharing some of the learnings that are coming out of this crisis. And I would like to conclude with some of the learnings which they have come out. And it is in the Times of India newspaper if anybody wants to read it. So one is, they are talking about how to bring down the cost of medical education. And also Vaidish mentioned that how do we get the doctors and the research fellows back into the country and pay them well. The second one is how to get healthcare cover for the unorganized sector, how to really expand the public healthcare system. The third one they're talking about is allocation of resources so that the country doesn't have to make a choice in the future between lives and livelihood. And last but not the least is obviously better governance at both the center as well as at the state levels. So with that, I would like to conclude, and I would request all of you to stay safe and work through this crisis, and wishing you all the very best. Over to you, Gaurav.
Thanks a lot, Prabal. I think, as always, very practical points for leaders who can go immediately back to their workplace and implement. I think we really thank you for your valuable insights. And now we are very fortunate to have another very important industry leader representing the human resource function, which is playing critical role in current crisis, Ms. Indrani. I think if we all remember 2008, the crisis was actually the main function which was actually fighting that crisis and trying to overcome that crisis was the chief financial officer and the finance department. But I think the COVID-19 crisis, we will see the role of HR very critical in managing and coming out of this crisis. And this is becoming a major accelerator of one of the greatest workplace transformation that we are going to see. We are seeing massive change in how we work, exercise, shop, learn, communicate. And of course, where we work, all this will change forever. So how will this massive transformation impact the workplace? We want your valuable inputs. And also, Indrani, I would like personally to know from you why the feminist leadership is important in this crisis. Because we all know that this COVID-19 is impacting male population more than the female. And also, if you see the majority of the kind of bodies that are being made are led by the male leaders. So I think male qualities of compassion, emotional intelligence, and any other tenacity which are required are more critical to overcome this crisis. In your opinion, how the feminist leader will also play an important role in overcoming this crisis? So over to you, Indrani.
Thank you so much, Gaurav. And first of all, a very, very warm welcome to everybody who's joined us. For me, it's an honor to be here sharing the stage with Vaidish sir, and thanks. But terrible way to be known as that. 2020 so unprecedented. I'll try to talk about two aspects. You mentioned the workplace and you mentioned leadership, and I'll try and work it through the questions that are currently going on through my mind or the mind of any HR. Of the year, there was a playbook that all leaders had or all HR heads had to actually navigate have a playbook. We will possibly write one at the end of it. But I think there are many chapters that are getting created along the way. Is really focusing on
Voice is cracking.
safety. Is it clearer now?
Yeah, it is better now. Yeah.
Okay. So the first half is really about safety, safety of our staff, safety of our patients, safety of mentioned cash flows that I cannot tell you how important that is right now. Just managing for the, getting your staff in place, getting the logistics around this during lockdowns and all of that. And finally, a lot of scenario planning or contingency plannings. There are lots of consultants also helping, and you can future with variables that you don't completely understand. So that's going to be your, H1. And therefore, I think most important part is
I think your voice is cracking, Indrani. If you can come near to the screen.
Okay. Just let me know whenever it goes off again. In 2008 was the last crisis of a mega global crisis that some of us went through. But this is so much worse than that. The leadership now has to straddle so many things. They have to do communication. They have to do empathetic communication. They have to take the hard calls. They have to constantly engage with the staff and give them hope. And it's so much difficult for the leaders themselves. Now, H2 will really be, one day the Black Swan event will definitely end. And that's when in H2, organizations and leaders need to be prepared to, once again get back into a recovery mode, into a, building the future mode, into really leveraging the pent-up demand that will come there. So this really, therefore, is a year of two halves. And therefore, I think the implications are there for every single people process or HR process that there is. In H1, the role of the workplace itself is being redefined. People's homes have turned into the workplace. You almost want to, figure out that when the Black Swan event ends, do you still want to actually have something called a workplace? You are no more going to work. You are actually just, you're just responsible for delivering the results. So I think the role of the corporation itself is going to be questioned. Some organizations will build on that. Digital capability is going to be the background, and I think we'll all have digital workplaces with some, depending on the nature of the industry, some brick and mortar workplaces where you kind of meet once in a while. But really the rules of the workplace are changing. The rules of workplace communication, engagement, reviews are changing. And in a sense, I think the workplace is also getting massively democratized. Suddenly rooms and career levels, and therefore the perks associated with career levels may not mean that much. What you really want is having safe workplace, safe employees who are safe, employees' families who are safe in their homes. And you also have to, I think the distinction between work and personal life is also dissolving. Organizations have to be mindful that their employees are suddenly straddling not just work from home, but homeschooling as well. So imagine a family of 2 kids who've, and maybe with just 1 computer or 2 computers at home. Suddenly the school actually is involving the parent in the schooling process itself if the kids are young. No mates, no support structure at home. It is a crazy place. So it is really, I think the role of the corporation will be questioned. What is the kind of support that we are able to provide to employees who are working from home, to their families, plus to the employees who are required to be at the workplace? Both pieces become so important in H1. I think you also, I think there is a realization suddenly that a lot of the things which we took for granted in an office setup is just suddenly, you can, as Vedish sir said, the theory of constraint suddenly brings to light all of that. And you really are taking a hard look at what is essential and what is good to have. So good to have would really be, again, traveling at the drop of a hat for a meeting. All of the nicer things, the frills of corporate life. So as for it, I think today the employee benefits and a friendly workplace would possibly be workplaces which organize supply chain for the families and families of employees back home. So I think we have to be very mindful of that. Face time will become, much less important, and results somehow I think will become far more important. Now, this also requires a huge shift in in entire leadership, all of us. So suddenly, if I'm not seeing members of my team for long stretches of time, I will only have to trust them, and I will only have to rely on the deliverable at work, which they will do from their homes. That's a big mindset shift, especially for the industry I represent, hospitals in India, because hospitals are used to it is a working under one roof kind of a scenario. But even there, I think these new realities will come in. The fact that we will have to invest in digital tools to just keep the ship running is going to become important. Today, just access to VPN and access to an uninterrupted data piece becomes an employee right if work has to get delivered. So all of that comes in. I think the role of effective leadership will also need to, focus on being very authentic and being very transparent. Leaders will have to take tough calls. I think the best hospitals possibly have a cash flow that can sustain them for 3 months in the current scenario, and the rest will possibly have cash flows for 1 to 1.5 months. So that is really the tight margin we are talking of, given that elective surgeries are almost zero or really minimal in most private hospitals. Doctors are not, you have to be mindful of the safety of both doctors and patients. A lot of doctors are practicing social distancing on their own, so they're not really coming in for elective surgeries. It's only ER, and ER contributes to about 30% of the revenue. So really the drop in revenue that we're talking of for most hospitals is in the range of 50 to 70 in the short term, 50 to 70% in the short term. And, however, it's also said that hospitals and healthcare is one of the industries which will be, relatively protected, when the recovery happens. So it really depends on the length of the disruption, the depth of the disruption, and, what is going to be the shape of that recovery curve. Best estimates are, or the most, pessimistic estimates are, of course, 2021, Q2 of 2021. And the most optimistic estimates are Q2 of 2020. But even then, really, H1 is pretty much going to very cost cutting. So that's where leaders and HR leaders in particular have to ensure that, the tough calls are taken with data, with consideration, and it's taken only once. You can't keep doing it in little cycles, because then it creates havoc in the people who are actually surviving the thing. The first effort really should be for all leaders to maybe, walk the talk, take salary cuts, and protect as many jobs as possible in the front line. But that's not going to be enough, and therefore, I do see job cuts to be
we are again losing you.
Okay.
Maybe if you can finish it fast, because then we'll have to.
Sure. So effective leadership is clearly one thing. The second bit is, the first bit of course,
switch off your video. I think there's a bandwidth issue. Maybe then your audio will become clearer.
Okay, is it better now?
It is better now, yes.
Okay. Those more advanced people building processes are the first casualty of these cost cutting or the budget cuts. But you will also have to prepare for H2 when the recovery phase starts, and therefore you will still have to ring fence your identified talent. You will have to ramp up training. Now you may not be doing external training so much, but you will have to build the capability in-house to still deliver training digitally, over devices and phones, because classroom training is going to be a long time before that again happens. And hospitals, training.
I think, Indrani, we have lost you. Maybe we'll come back to you again. Yeah. I think there is some bandwidth issue with Indrani's.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, but we are losing you in between. Maybe we'll come back to you again, Indrani.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. And I think it's a fantastic insights. And a lot of startups where we have invested are actually telling us that the productivity of employees have improved when they have started working from home, because now they are not only working from home, but they're also working for home and working at home. So a very healthy work-life balance. So now I'll basically welcome my next panelist, Ms. Sakshi Jeti, who represents the executive search industry. Ms. Sakshi is the managing director of Lexcrude, a global healthcare search firm. She's a Wharton Business School alumni and has over 2 decades of senior leadership experience in across various leading healthcare organizations. She has recently won the prestigious Woman Icon of the Year 2019 by Economic Times. So, Sakshi, as we know that the latest online survey of CEOs by CII reflects a very negative sentiment that 52% of firms expect job losses, and most of the firms have frozen all new hirings. As you represent a global executive search firm, what is your assessment of the situation?
First of all, I would like to thank you, Mr. Gaurav, for providing me opportunity to share my thoughts. And I would also, I'm also thankful to Mr. Vedish to spare out his time, as well as my co-panelists, so that we could organize such a wonderful event for the senior leaders as well as the future leaders. Gaurav, as CII has pointed out that 52% firms actually expect that there will be job losses. This is very rightly said, because the current situation, it looks very gloom and doom. But I would also like to say that it is not that there will not be a bright side to it. Today, there is an impact of COVID, and even the International Labour Organization says that the impact could cause a loss which is equivalent to 195 million job losses, which is a huge number. What we see is that because of the COVID or the coronavirus which has spread, people are trying to make the ends meet. There have been people who are laying off. The outbreak has also impacted the Indian economy. And that is because there has been futuristic, or you can say there has been estimates that the previous quarter has seen a loss, and even the subsequent quarter will see a revenue as well as a profit loss. What I can see with my experience in this in the executive search is that majorly the impact will be on airlines and airport operations, because the aviation sector has been hugely impacted. Then the Indian tourism and the hospitality industry, again, there will be huge potential job losses, which is a staggering number of 3.8 crores, which is like they will have to lay off like 70% of the workforce, which we could all see with the CEOs of big hotels also saying that they've had a huge pay cut. They are taking zero salary for the next year, as well as they are laying off operation. That was the Marriott CEO whom I could see crying on the LinkedIn, and when he posted his video, which was really good on his part, that he could at least support few people in the front line, but then it is seeing a big loss, and it will see a big loss maybe in the next 6 to 9 months also. And if I talk of healthcare, where we majorly focus, what we see and what Indrani and everybody is saying, that hospitals, the elective procedures have been restricted or there are no elective procedures. But what I see, it is a short-term impact. There is always a positive impact, because now healthcare will be one of the primary focus for global organization. Everywhere the government, where it was not investing into healthcare, very small portion of their budget was allocated to healthcare, they've all realized that healthcare is very, very, very important. Everybody needs to contribute to healthcare. So this industry today, there might be a slowdown, but the future is very bright, because I think every hospital, we need more beds, we need more ventilators, we need more consumables, and things which are associated to them, they will all grow. If I talk of consumables, manufacturing has to grow, the labor intensive industry will grow, so more hirings will happen. Though it might happen that it will not be that we will have more of sales people who are going and meeting people or doctors in the industry, it will be more digitalization. So we can't say that it is all gloom and doom. Today there is definitely a slowdown, but tomorrow there will be a bright future. What I can see is that the C-suite hirings have fallen, and which is like 50%, which have fallen, which again may be a short-term impact. But industries do need future leaders. They need leaders who are very visionary. They cannot run without visionary leaders. To my surprise, what has also happened, that the B school internship and final placements have also been put on hold. And this is again very surprising, though it is very sad on part of students who've been there and they've been all waiting for the internships as well as placement drives. But I will take an example of Facebook, in which they are all saying that we will not stop internships, we will provide ample opportunities to students. Even LinkedIn, Google, they are doing that, because they see these bright students as future leaders. So they cannot stop. They are not holding interns. They might say, okay, we will provide you a remote internship, which is what is the need of the hour. And what we have also seen, that there has been a slowdown or a freeze in hiring. The interviews are being delayed. So 60 to 65% interviews are getting delayed. But yes, they are being delayed. They are waiting for the right time, and then it will all happen. What I'm very saddened, or it's very sad to see that it's been just 15 days of lockdown and people are just starting laying off. It is this, what I will call it, is a reactionary management. It is not a strategic leadership, which everybody, Prabal and Mr. Vedish also very rightly said, that we have to have a strategic leadership. It is not that today you remove all the employees who have been very productive, who are very good. It will be very, very difficult to rehire such employees. So what is important is that, what with my business sense, I've also handled operations, I've also been responsible for P&L. The easiest way for a leader to cut on cost is remove employees, that is sack the manpower, which should never be the strategy. Because what human sentiments is, 70% is emotionally what they realize, that human experience, they 30% is the rational experience, and for 70% is emotionally they are bound. So if you remove the employees, they will remember it always, and then it is very difficult for us to rehire and strengthen the organization. Today there is a slowdown, but tomorrow again you need to grow the company, grow the revenue, and how will you do? So what I will say, that is, it is important to think for better options. That is why not work together with the employees and find a solution to keep the staff on hand for this temporary situations, like maybe going for a 3-day work week, cutting salary by some percentage, senior management taking a salary reduction or a pay cut. Let us give the chance to the employee and tell them that this is the situation, because every employee understands that the situation is grim today. And let us give them a chance that we will give you a cost reduction today, and then he wants to stay or not, it is his prerogative. As Mr. Vedish very rightly said that he had seen such a scenario when he was in Indonesia, and he took a pay cut. But then the company also remembers that the employee was with them in the time of crisis, and the company paid back. So that compensation can be done later on in life. So the loyalty is a two-way street. The company has to treat the employees correctly, and then the employees will revert back. I think I will like to conclude by saying that to be an effective leader during this time, you should remember that human experience life, again, what I say, 30% rationally and 70% emotionally. Right now, the emotions tend towards fear and uncertainty. So although what you communicate is important, how you do it and how it makes your people feel is crucial for effective leader is more important. The feeling followers need most are trust, compassion, stability, and hope. So this is the time to show compassion to the employees and the companies which used to say that we work for the benefit of employees. It is very, very important to walk the talk, because these people are your most productive people. They have brought the company to the level which they are in today, and they can only bring it, or they can make it sustainable and profitable. So we need to have a balance between the management as well as the employees. Layout cut down is not the solution. We need to have a very positive uh, aspect to it and keep the employees also motivated.
Thanks a lot, Sachi. I think it's a wonderful points that you have put in. And I just remember a very nice share when you were talking. गुजर जाएगा ये दौर भी गालिब, जरा सा इत्मीनान तो रख, जब खुशियां ही नहीं ठहरी तो गम की क्या औकात है.
Thank you.
So with this, I think I go to the next speaker. We are very fortunate to have Kshitij among us. He's an industry veteran, over 20 years of experience in healthcare and financial industry. He is right now the business leader of Philips Healthcare. And we all know that Philips is one of the companies which is actually fighting the war from the front by providing us the critical ventilator and other critical care equipments. So very important role that he's playing. And he has worked extensively across Indian subcontinent, Singapore, Middle East, and Turkey, transforming various businesses along the way. So, Kshitij, I would like you to throw some light on what is Philips doing in this current crisis. And also, I would like personally you to share your learnings of 2008 financial crisis, because most of us know that at that point of time, you were in GE Capital. And you have seen that crisis from a very close hand. So I think your inputs will be very important for all of us to navigate this crisis. Over to you, Kshitij.
Yeah, thank you, Gaurav, for having me on this panel. Thanks a lot. Personally, I've been in the center of a few crises already. As you rightly mentioned, in 2008, during the global financial crisis, I was with GE Capital, one of the largest financial institutions in the world. And I've seen the stocks coming from a mid-20s to down to single digit and then bouncing back. I've seen the era of Citibank coming down to less than $1 stock and then coming back, bouncing back again. I would maybe like take a reflection on the recent one. While I was in Dubai recently in 2018, I was handling Middle East and Turkey, and we had what I call it as a perfect storm. 2018 saw Turkey going through a political coup attempt, economic problems coming in, where we saw the currency going down by almost 40%. All kinds of issues coming up. All of a sudden, the industry, which was a $300 million industry, shrinking in less than 6 months to $200 million. So not only a degrowth, but a sharp degrowth in probably which is considered to be the most resounding industry of a healthcare going down like that. You had the interest rates coming up from 18-20% to 45 to 50% upwards of that. So we have all this happening in less than 6 months. And if that was not enough, we had Iran and US relationships going through a turmoil where the Iran nuclear deal was called off, which would have meant that all kind of things that were allowed earlier were all not possible now. So what I'm going to do is pick up some of the learnings from there and talk about what did we do at that point of time. And there are certain learnings that we can carry over in this crisis situation as well. First and foremost, what we did at that point of time was that we were used to managing with our management team of 11 people. First thing that we did was that we extended the management team to CXO -1, -2, which means that straight away 35 people were part of the management. So whatever the communication we were doing straight to these 35 people. And why were we doing that? We did that for a very simple reason, that in a crisis situation, speed is of essence. When the captain says, move left, then everybody needs to move left and divert that thing. Okay. And you don't want to wait for a situation where you have said left, the sailor will take its own time and then he'll communicate to his rest of the crew, etc. So you want to make sure that you have a very responsive mechanism already in place. That's piece number one that we put in out there. The second thing which we did very effectively was, while we are in this crisis situation, people relate to stories well. So you need to put evidences and stories around it. So for example, like what we used in Middle East was that we said, this is a perfect storm and we need to adjust our sail. And everybody used the same lingo. So if we said like, okay, we are going to do this thing, everybody said, okay, this is what we are going to adjust our sail to. This is what our direction would look like. The third thing that I think which worked well was that since we had the management team -1 and all together, everybody spoke the same language. Now that's important because if you're working either with the boards or with the multinationals, you would have headquarters which will keep on asking questions, and everybody, whether you spoke to the finance guy, to a chairperson, everybody spoke the same language, same lingo, to the extent that headquarters started saying, oh, you guys are setting your sail in a different direction now. So it's important to keep your relevant stakeholders in a complete sync with what you are doing from a direction. And the fourth one is, this is an opportunity where the leaders lead. This is an opportunity where the visible leadership has to come out. As Vedish and other fellow panel members also mentioned, every crisis throws up champions. Champions will emerge out of any crisis. And this is the crisis that will throw up a lot of leaders. In this leadership scenario, you will have people coming in who will engage far more. You have to be coming out and talking to your employees much more directly and be honest. Be honest about it. I know a lot goes into a leader's mind in this crisis. He's also a human being after all. But if you are a leader, you have to lead it from the front. You have to make sure that you are going to speak your mind. At the same time, even if it is required to smile, you have to smile a little more, because nobody follows a leader who is panicked. This is a crisis. This is not a panic. Let's understand this. And that's an important difference, because panic will not take us anywhere else. Crisis management will take us to the next level. People mentioned about the strategic and the tough choices to be made out there. There will be priorities to be made in terms of strategic, which will probably yield effects after a year or 2 years, and a short-term goal. And those are tough choices to be made, because there is a cash flow management that needs to be done for the immediate, let's say 3 months, 6 months kind of a thing, versus doing it for a 2 years kind of a horizon. And it's a great learning, at least for me. Suppose you had to hire a supply chain and a logistics person, and 2 people were doing their job. You could actually sometimes be able to manage with 1. And it is up to us to ask for people for more. And I've seen that, and pleasantly surprised that people are willing to take more in these tough times. And that could be probably because of the job insecurity or whatever, but they are willing to step up and work along with you as long as they give you a confidence that you are doing it right. And the last learning that I would have is that these times, as you also mentioned in your share, these times will not last forever, right? These are the opportunities where you get your teams ready for the future. When the tide really goes high, are you ready to swim again? And these are the times that you kind of put in for investing in your people in terms of your training. You might not be able to do external trainings, but get your internal teams to train each other. Engage with your customers even more right now, because these are the times that the customers will also remember, did you do something extraordinary out of the way and do it? Yeah. The way I see it is Gaurav is in the following manner, and that's my closing remark. When we go through these kind of phases, it looks like all gloom and doom. I've seen that in 2008, when people said the banks will lose their trust, banks will never have people coming back to them, etc., etc. But look at it now. We responded well. We capitalized the banks well. The capital adequacy went up well. And that's the reason why we are coming out stronger out of the 2008 from a banking financial crisis to a much stronger banks later on. I still see healthcare in a very positive manner. And if anybody has any doubt, as Sakshi also mentioned, look at aviation, look at tourism, look at hotels, look at real estate, the construction, those kind of industries. Look at the impact that they're having. We are fortunate to be in the healthcare industry, 20%, 40%, 60%, whatever is our occupancy rates, we still have occupancy. Look at airlines, hotels, they have gone zero. Yeah, I personally feel that we will see a recovery. The knee replacements, the cataracts, which have been postponed in the last few months, will come back. The knees will start creaking again, and you will need that thing again. So it's a matter of time. The question is not if it will come back. The question is really is when it will come back. And we need to be ready as leaders to prepare ourselves and our teams to be ready for that recovery. The recovery might look like a we or a you. That's just a debate, but the recovery will happen, and we need to be ready for that. Thanks, Gaurav.
Thanks, Kshitij. And I think extraordinary points that you have put. Particularly, I liked about the smile. I think a lot of us are feeling that you rightly mentioned that this is they are feeling under panic and not feeling that this is a crisis where active intervention of leadership is required.
Yeah.
Crisis will throw out champions. I think a lot of pearls of wisdom there, and we are fortunate to have you on our panel. So our next panelist is a very senior healthcare industry leader, Mr. Manish. Manish is the president of Polymedicure Limited. It's an Indian multinational. He has 21 years of experience of business and general management in medical technology and pharmaceutical industry. He's an active member of medical tech trade forums like CII, Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce, and also he's engaged with the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority on medical device regulations. So Manish, as you represent a leading Indian healthcare MNC, what is your assessment on increased voices on urgent need of manufacturing base, especially in healthcare, shifting from China to India? A lot of our earlier panelists were also talking about it, that we need to be self-sufficient, at least in healthcare. And I think every country will now do that. Trump will never like to phone again Mr. Modi and ask for a chloroquine. So nobody wants not to be self-sufficient. Similarly, India would also like to be self-sufficient as far as the healthcare infrastructure and healthcare equipments and healthcare pharmaceutical industry is concerned. So we would like to understand your thoughts on it. And also we would like to understand how can we accelerate this critical shift to be self-sufficient from China to India. And yesterday I was reading a very welcome news coming from Japan, that they are willing to fund their companies who are willing to shift their manufacturing base outside of China. And we all know that India is one of their esteemed partners. So over to you, Manish, and looking forward to your thoughts. Manish, you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry for that. Could you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you loud.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity of shared learning. And I have really learned a lot from Vedi, Kshitij, and everybody over the last 1 hour. This is a very, very interesting paradigm, because on one side we say when it is VUCA, when it is a crisis management, then you don't need to be doing everything all, then it's all about cooperating as a team. And on the other side, everybody of us wants to be self-sufficient, which is all. So if all of us want to be self-sufficient, it possibly leads to a cat fight. Now, my view on this would be that I don't think I need to be doing everything. Rather than doing everything, whatever I am doing, I should be taking it deeper. Now, when I say deeper, I will give you some examples. Now, the examples are, just a second. Okay. Now, in medtech, when I say the medtech sector, 70% is imported, which is primarily driven by medical equipment. Now, this import dependency, which we say, could be because of 3 reasons. One, the physician's preference and demand. The demand side is asking for something imported. Second, there is a zero local manufacturing. We don't have a competency available locally. And third, of course, possibly it's a patented technology. There cannot be multiple manufacturers of that. Now, when it is no local manufacturing, it could be because there is no local competency available. And of course, there is no tech transfer, which could be because of patented technology. And third, last but not the least, there is no economy of scale having multiple manufacturing locations, or there could be some other reasons. Now, being self-sufficient or creating an import substitution, and that too for all, is an idle ask, but could be a tall ask to have, keeping in mind the resources, competencies. There are global trade obligations. So possibly can we pick and choose? Now, when you look at if I say implants and consumables in the medical technology side, which is stents, orthopedic implants, dialysis, hand instruments, consumables, etc. I think we have a fair bit of competency which is made in India. It's just a matter of how do you scale them up. Now, the local production, the local competency is high quality, and it is globally accepted, now being fast globally accepted also. Yes, we need to scale up the capacities, and the balancing in demand, the balance in the demand has already started. Now, the consumer has already started accepting that, yes, made in India could also be decent, high quality, and I need to start using it. When it comes to capital equipments, we definitely have the competency. Depending on the scale of local demand, which is very important, the scale of local demand, then basis on that, we could choose where to focus and invest in India. For example, ventilators, X-ray machines, ultrasounds, etc. These are already being looked at locally. And so much so somebody has already started manufacturing a cath lab locally. Now, be self-sufficient. That is what I would say, and possibly export some. In some category, you could be self-sufficient and even possibly export, but continue importing something which may not make sense to manufacture locally. When you say continue importing, today we were just looking at China as one source. Can you develop multiple sources? Can you collaborate more? Can you cooperate more? That's what my take would be on the medical technology side. Now, this is easier said than done, unless and until the state or the government supports would not be an easy action to do to make it in India. When I look at the government, what do I have and ask from the state side? And this is not a new thing, everybody of us knows about it. The first thing which maybe we could expect from the government is to help us have some sort of a preferential treatment in sort of their demand. So can you help made in India product be more participative in the demand which the government is going to generate? Secondly, can you have some R&D incentives, maybe some weighted deductions over the period? Thirdly, on the financial side, can you look at some capital subsidies? Can you help us have some cheaper loans? And lastly, but not the least, corrected inverted duty structures. That's what I would say. If all of these are put together, I think that will really motivate people to start making it in India. And mind you, when you're talking about the bigger multinational brothers, entities already talking about shifted bases from China or now Japan to India, that itself will help us to go self-sufficient. Because when you make it in India, most of it you will try and utilize that to cater to the Indian demand also. So it's going to be an icing on the cake. Now, if I can, though I am from a medical medtech, but pharma is also related to us. We all know that we are the generic pharmacy of the world, but for APIs, we are dependent on not in India for the active pharmaceutical ingredients or the excipients. We need to import primarily from China. 2/3 is imported from China, and incidentally, a lot of API is also imported from European countries like Italy. Now, in the present scenario, we are facing the heat because both in China and in Italy there are challenges, and they have stopped importing that, exporting that to other countries. The recent ban on exports of 26 formulations by Government of India, which were primarily to the drugs which were related to COVID treatment, is another example wherein we are wanting to say that there is a panic that if we start exporting, we are not self-sufficient because we were exporting. To meet the local demand, we will have to stop exporting that. Before I put an ask on from the pharma sector side, I think government has already started towards the end of March. I think it was 26th or 27th of March. Government has already announced an investment of 10,000 crores to develop the API capability and capacity locally. They are talking about 3 bulk drug parks wherein they will invest 3,000 crores, and 2 of them have already been identified. One is in Assam and one is in Andhra Pradesh. This is what over the next 3 years, they will help us to almost go self-sufficient, almost, I will not say 100%, almost go self-sufficient in our requirements for API. Last but not the least, like medtech, government in API is already announced production link incentives. So these are the ways and means government is supporting pharma sector, and I'm sure they will also be wanting to support the medtech side. I hope it answers the query which you have, Gaurav. Happy to add more if you would want to. Thank you very much.
Excellent points, Manish, and very valuable inputs. And listening to you, I just remember few lines from Mr. Bachchan's poem. नन्ही चींटी जब दाना लेकर चलती है, चढ़ती दीवारों पर 100 बार फिसलती है, मन का साहस रगों में हिम्मत भरता है, चढ़कर गिरना गिरकर चढ़ना ना अथरता है, मेहनत उसकी बेकार हर बार नहीं होती, कोशिश करने वालों की कभी हार नहीं होती. So I think our Make in India initiative, we have to continuously try and make sure that our country becomes self-sufficient. And we 100% agree to your points. And I think government is also looking in this direction, and all the stakeholders are looking in this direction. So
one thing, Gaurav, if I could add quickly towards the end, to reiterate, it is going to be more of collaboration going ahead. Yes, we would expand our manufacturing in India, but we will have to collaborate more and look at world as one, and not trying to make, oh, I want to make everything, forget about my neighbor. So that possibly may not help. Thank you very much.
100% we agree. And I think now coming to an end, we have reserved one of our best speakers for the last, Mr. Vinesh Kadia. He has over 27 years of experience of managing business of pharmaceutical and healthcare industry. He is currently the Senior Vice President and Head of IVF Venture at Lupin. He was earlier one of the founding member and Chief Operating Officer of Nova Fertility. Now, hospitals are minimizing, postponing, or canceling elective procedures, we all know, due to this coronavirus outbreak. And in your opinion, what do you think will be the medium and long-term impact on elective surgeries or single specialty clinics like eye care or fertility? Because we all know that private equity has invested a huge amount in this space. And what do you see the future looks like? Over to you, Vinesh. Vinesh? I think we have lost Vinish. So we'll get him back once we do it. So there was a very important question, I think, which we had a lot of people are asking, and we had missed earlier when there was interactions going on. And I think that question is over to you, Mr. Vadish, because you represent the pharmaceutical industry, you represent and understand what is going on. So one of the important question is, do we see any vaccine which is coming up? Do we see any cure which is coming up in the near future of this coronavirus, so that we all once again live in peace?
Yeah, so Gaurav, I think this question is not only from this audience. I think it's a global question, right? Everybody is looking for, when is this pain going to end? See, one of the, I would say, proud moment for all of us working in the healthcare industry. We as an industry have the power to solve the human problem. Okay, so you look at all the historically, whatever the human beings challenge that we face, particularly in relation to health, right from a smallpox to chicken pox to the various, whether it's a rotavirus, whether it is pneumococcal, or whether it's Zika, Ebolas, and see, look at the way in which the pharma industry has responded has always been phenomenal. And same is the case with the corona, that what you and me are saying. For even H1N1, today we have the virus, we have the vaccine. Today it's available even in India, right? So today there are more than 82 clinical trials are running parallelly at different parts of the world. Our scientists are working, almost every company is behind it, either looking at antiretroviral therapy or whether they are looking at vaccines. So, typically a good drug discovery takes anywhere between 8 to 12 years time, right? Or a vaccine development, if I have to start from zero, around 10 to 12 years time. So what you need to appreciate our scientific community is the fact that they've already characterized this particular virus. And fortunately, during those H1N1 breakout SARS or MERS, so that's why it's called the corona, novel corona, but they identified this as a corona, right? So we are blessed, and we should be in a happy situation that currently we are at a far significant stage rather than waiting for 8 to 10 years. We are talking about people are working at a breakneck speed in trying to come up with a vaccine in about 6 to 12 months time, correct? And whether it's a GSK, whether it is J&J, whether it's Pfizer, almost Novartis, all big, including Indian companies like Bharat Bio and various other companies, they're all putting the energy behind it. So I won't be surprised if you get a vaccine, at least for people at large at the trial stage, in 6 to 8 months time, where it will get administered, and within a year's time you'll have a vaccine. I don't think you will see a similar problem when you turn back a year down the road. So that's a good news from a vaccine point of view. And the drug point of view, you know very well there are various drugs, combination that people are trying, whether it's a chlorhexidine, chloroquine hydroxy, or a combination of azithromycin, combination with zinc and all those stuff. There's a lot of clinical global trials are right now simultaneously happening. So I'm quite sure that we'll also have another one is the antiretroviral therapy. So we are in a far better situation. What all of us need to remember is, I know this is causing a lot of hardship, economic as well as human deaths. But that is the kind of animal that you are dealing with. But there is definitely a light at the end of the tunnel. Probably the social distancing is the first medicines that we follow and make sure that we don't pass on, we break the chain. And meanwhile, you will have a medicine and a virus coming in. So we all need to hang in with the tension and go through the social change. And this is not an apocalypse. So something which all of us need to recognize. This is not the end of the world. This is one of the challenges that we face as humanity, and we all should be giving a loud cheer to all our scientific community, healthcare workers that are coming up with a fantastic solution. So don't be in a downbeat mood. We all should be ready to come up with, receive the solution. Okay, so let's be very cheerful at the end of the day.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think a lot of positivity and optimism, and listening to you, I think we all feel there is a huge amount of opportunity which lies ahead of us, and we see light at the end of the tunnel. So we are also having our Vinesh back. I think we had some connection issue. So Vinesh, a very important question to you quickly is about the elective procedures as you represent the single specialty chain of clinics. So what do you think will be the short-term and the long-term impact on the elective surgery space and the single specialty clinics? Over to you, Vinesh.
Morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Gaurav, for this opportunity to share my thoughts, and thank you to Rectorate and Saxi for being participant in organizing this wonderful sharing and learning experience. First point first, I will try to finish the answer in fast because I think everyone has heard about more than an hour for all the co-panelists, and there was a lot of learning, especially from Mr. Vaidesh. I am an optimist person by personality, so most of my expression or my thought process will be on optimism. I think no one of us was ready for this kind of situation, and this is a crisis, and which will bring best out of all of us. That's what is my firm belief, and I always believe in this thought process that whenever you hit to a crisis or you get challenged, it's the time to learn, it's time to grow, and not to get bogged down from this. Who will bring the world out of this crisis? I think this is a responsibility of every form of leaders, not only business leaders, political leaders, global leaders. I think everybody is thinking and trying to work out of it. And again, being my optimism, I think this situation has come to us for us to learn and to grow. So taking a worldly view, I think the whole world has hit pause button. There is nothing much we can do in this. There are directives across the world, and all businesses practically are accepting essentials are stopped. If the world has hit pause button, I think to me, maybe next 2, 3, 4 months, when we will be out of this virus crisis, I am expecting that we will live in a cleaner, calmer, maybe wiser, and a happier world. That's what I believe, that it has come to us for us to understand where to focus, what to improve, and as a humanity, as a global world, I think we will live in a better world post this crisis. Taking that thought process to the organization, if I go back as being one of the founding member of a healthcare startup when I was in my previous role of Nova, when we start working as a leader, we have less time to introspect and more time to chase our budgets. We have our top line targets, we have our bottom line targets, we have our rollout targets. And I think we keep chasing. While we keep expanding the organization, we all know, but we don't have time to see that we also start, when we start running fast, we also start making more gaps in between our organization. And we don't have time to introspect and stop ourselves because we have to chase our numbers and we have to chase our budgets, we have to chase our business targets, our metrics and the new rollouts. I would prefer, and I would suggest, and I would practice that this is the time when we are compelled to slow down our business, or our business is slowed down because of external environment, which is not completely in our control. I think this is an appropriate time for us to sit back, introspect, and identify gaps. Now, when I'm saying gaps in the organization, is first is being you as a leader. There's a lot of time for us to to grow ourselves, to upgrade ourselves. This webinar spending time is one of the aspect what I'm trying to say, and become a better leader and better person to lead the company in when we hit the normalcy back. Second is to identify and identify gaps which are there in our team. And we can use these 1, 2, 3 months, whatever we are not into normal business, is to organize first to do a dipstick study, research ourselves, take feedback from the team, and understand what are the gaps which are required to train. I see a lot of companies at present are connecting to their teams. I am working at present in Lupin, and we have maybe about 20 webinars scheduled in next 15 days, which are practically 2 every day. And we have to pick and choose which webinar, and all our external trainers and very, very, very reputed companies giving training from top leadership down up to medical representative. So these are the time I think my current organization is using to connect with the team, understand the gap, and train them so that when we hit back normalcy, we will have a better team in place, better capability in place, better training skills in place, better selling skills in place, and better understanding of bringing back the business to normal or even better than normal. Also, I see a lot of companies, and including companies where I had worked in past or my current company. My daughter works with a global organization as a clinical embryologist, and I have seen that they are about 8-9 hours busy every day. They are connecting with their customers, and this is time to ask all your important clients and customers that what do you want us to improve. Once you get outline points about say 6, 7, maybe 8 points which our customers wants us to improve, what want us to give training to them, this time can be utilized very well to reconnect with your key customer, understand them better, bond them better than what we were before. I don't think we will get this kind of opportunity, time, mindset, and also time to introspect to find what we need to improve in ourselves as leaders, because this kind of crisis will bring best out of us, what we can improve in terms of our capability of our senior management team, our middle management team, our ground soldiers. This is the time where we have all the time to connect very well, democratically ask all our clients, all our customers, what is in it they would want us to improve, and connect and bond with them. When we hit back to normal, maybe a month, 2 months, 3 months, I think this time where we have connected to our team, ourselves, our customer will help us to become a better organization overall. I would suggest and I would utilize this time to hit a pause button, see all the gaps which were there, which I could not see because I was running behind my business matrices and my targets. Identify them, work on them, improve that matrices so that when we bounce back, I firmly believe that there is, I don't know why, but I've not pushed a panic button to myself, neither to organization, neither to my team. And I completely agree with what Sakshi told. I don't think this is time for layoffs. This is time for any panic, knee-jerk reaction. As a leaders, if we use this time more for improvement and act rather than react, we will still have 8-9 months in the new financial year to bring back our business. Now, specifically to your question, Gaurav, whatever electives procedures are being postponed, I don't think it's going to go anywhere else. It will come back. So you take from my view of from IVF business, if we have X number of million customers who are suffering from subfertility, out of them slice and dice, if there are few thousand, 100,000, 200,000, whatever customers who are planning to do IVF in this year, they'll not go back anywhere. Maybe they'll take time to come back. Maybe we will have only 8 months to do normal business in this year. Maybe we will have 9 months. I'm not very sure about that. That depends on how the virus behaves in next 15, 20 days, 1 month in India. But it will come back. And if we use this time for making ourselves stronger than ever before, we will be well placed to take that business back. I am very, very optimistic of the situation. It has come to us as a humanity, as world, as country, as organization, as team, as leader, for us to introspect and to improve and to become stronger than ever before. That's what I believe. Thank you.
Very important points, Vinish. And I think most important is what you have rightly said, time to introspect, time to reflect. And I think I would also like to say a few lines which I remember, beautiful words by Eric Hoffman. In times of change, learners will inherit the world. Learned will find themselves living in a world that no longer exists. So I think this is the right time to upgrade our skills, to make sure that we utilize this time effectively. And now I think I will summarize the whole event. And there are a lot of questions, but I think we have exceeded our time. So I'll individually mail those questions to the panelists, ask their inputs, and then I'll make sure that those answers are reaching back to our people who are asking these questions. So what I actually believe after listening to all the panelists, that we need to maintain hope and a growth orientation. It is almost inevitable that we will face a deep post-crisis recession. We all know that we will be in a recession. But this is not a reason to postpone innovation and investment. Counterintuitively, 14% of companies, this research has shown, grew both their top and bottom lines during recent economic downturns. And analysis has shown that they create value mainly through differential growth. This is true across, and I think very true for healthcare. The evidence is clear. The best time to grow differentially is when aggregate growth is low. Flourishers in a downturn do reduce cost to maintain viability, but they also innovate around new opportunities. And they reinvest in growth pillars in order to capture opportunity in adversity and shape the post-crisis future. So I think we all need to be optimistic. I'll just give you an example. We had invested in a startup which was manufacturing drones. I was not personally very happy because they were just serving a very limited clientele of defense. But now all of a sudden, drones have become critical for mass sanitization. If you have to sanitize a mass area, if you have to keep a track on the quarantine initiatives, these drones have become extremely important. So you never know when the change will come and what kind of opportunities will emerge in the new normal. So with this, I think I will thank each panelist for their valuable time. And I will also thank each attendees who have spent their time. We appreciate your time. And we pray that you should be safe. And we also pray that your loved ones are safe during this crisis. Thank you very much. And we thank each one of you for your valuable time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gaurav, for organizing this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you, Recruit.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hmm.